Welcome to another biblically based look into today's news from Christian Voice New Zealand. Now here's Mike Bain.
Hi, I'm Mike Bain from Christian Voice New Zealand. Let me ask you a question. What is it you believe, and what stance will you take on it tomorrow? The Apostle Paul wrote to the Philippians when he was incarcerated, and the reason he was incarcerated was because he would defend the gospel. Now, amidst the cultural wars going off all around us as a Christian, a follower of Jesus Christ, we must decide today what stance we're willing to defend tomorrow. You know, when opposition comes, we'll need to know what we believe and why we believe it. I say when opposition comes, but reality check, it's been here for decades. But until now, it's been subtle and happening to fellow Christians overseas. Now, most of you are familiar with the cake makers who hit the headlines years ago when they refused to make a cake for a gay wedding. And we're all familiar with how Australian rugby international Israel Folau was cancelled after his anti-gay social media post. But here's another example from Australia of how Satan's world is working to cancel Christian belief. For the first time, someone has lost their job, not because of something they said or did, but because of the church they belong to. The employer, the Melbourne-based AFL Essendon Club, which boasts an 80,000 membership, appointed a local businessman by the name of Andrew Thorburn as its chief executive. Well, by the time Andrew had finished his first day, he was given the heave-ho. But the story is best summed up by the Herald Sun headline. It said Essendon's chief executive Andrew Thorburn has stepped down after a shock link to church was revealed. Notice the language. This is a shock link. Not to a strip club, not to a gambling syndicate, not to a drug scandal. Gosh, they'd barely have raised an eyebrow. This was a shock link to a church. Now, the new CEO was forced out not because of anything he did or said, but simply because he's linked to a mainstream Christian church which, God forbid, teaches the Bible, and to make things worse, he's the chairman of their board. In theory, it's illegal to discriminate against someone because of their religious beliefs. But as the Essendon Club president admitted, in the interview process, you're not allowed to ask about people's religious beliefs. It's against the law. But what we did, as soon as we saw them, we acted. In other words, once they did check out Thorburn's religious beliefs, or should we say the beliefs of the church that he belongs to, they then decided to discriminate and determine that he was not a suitable candidate. The Essendon board declared that this was nothing to do with religious beliefs and that Essendon was a club where everyone was welcomed and respected. I can hear you saying, yeah, right. Only those with pre-approved beliefs will be welcomed. Those who blaspheme against progressive doctrines will be suitably excommunicated. Well, all we can say is welcome to the fundamentalist church of the woke. Now, reading the media and listening to the Victorian Premier Dan Andrews, one would think that Thorburn's church, the City on a Hill, was a Westboro Baptist-type extremist cult. In reality, they're just a mainstream evangelical Anglican church. But the press trawled, and this is what they found from a 2013 sermon. It said, we believe that we must be a voice for the voiceless, stand for the rights of the unborn baby and the pro-life, and be pro-life. Human life begins at conception. All women and men have an intrinsic value and worth as images of God. Abortion denies that voice of the most vulnerable. Sex, it said, is designed for marriage, and marriage for fulfilling God's mandate for humans to be fruitful and multiply. Lust is a sin. Sex outside of marriage is a sin. Practicing homosexuality is a sin, but same-sex attraction is not a sin. Well, like the Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church, the Evangelical Church, the Muslims, and many others, City on a Hill holds that abortion is wrong and that sex outside of marriage, including homosexuality, is wrong. As if the club's intolerance wasn't enough to deal with, political endorsement came in the form of the Victorian State Premier Dan Andrews. He joined in by commenting, "Those views are absolutely appalling. I don't support those views. That kind of intolerance, that kind of hatred, bigotry, it's just wrong." Well, the problem is that the Victorian Premier himself boasts about being a Catholic himself, and he sends his children to a Catholic school. So if he believes that belonging to a church which disapproves of abortion and homosexuality disqualifies you from a public office or even being a CEO of a private company, then why doesn't he immediately resign? After all, he is a member of a church which disapproves of abortion and homosexuality. But when Dan Andrews stated that that kind of intolerance, hatred and bigotry is wrong, he spoke better than he knew. Now he wants to ban the wrong kind of intolerance, hatred and bigotry. But his kind is perfectly acceptable. The question then becomes, if Christians can't be CEOs, can they stand for Parliament, work for the government or in hospitals, schools and the police? The significance of this event is that it marks the day when Australia moved away from being a pluralistic, tolerant society to one where those who deviate from the new progressive religion are not allowed to participate fully in civic society. Now remember, Essendon was a club which preached diversity and inclusion. Andrew Thorburn would have been unaware that the club preached it, but didn't practice it. So it would be fair to state his Christian beliefs being challenged in this manner came as a bit of a surprise to him. I mentioned at the outset, we as Christians need to decide today what it is we're prepared to give up if called upon to make a stand for the gospel. Andrew Thorburn was prepared when asked to choose between his job and his church. He gave up a salary which was thought to be around about 850,000 Australian. His response was gracious, thoughtful, compassionate and intelligent. He said, "It became clear to me that my personal Christian faith is not tolerated or permitted in the public square, at least by some, and perhaps by many. I was being required to compromise beyond a level that my conscience allowed." People, he said, people should be able to hold different views on complex personal and moral matters and be able to live and work together even with those differences and always with respect. So I ask again, as a Christian, what is it you believe and what stance will you take on it tomorrow? When opposition comes, and you know it will, we will need to know what we believe and why we believe it.
Thank you for watching. Help us to spread this message by sharing it within your own network. If you want to see more messages like this one, simply hit the subscribe button. For more information about our work, or if you're moved to donate the price of a cup of coffee, jump online to our website, christianvoicenewzealand.com.